Welcome everyone to our presentation on the evolution of communication technology. My name is Jason Nowazik, and shortly we will be joined by my colleagues Sherry and Eric to bring to you a presentation on two very important technologies that really furthered online communication. The first that you saw there in the opening sequence was AOL Instant Messenger, and the second one, which we will discuss later, is Twitter. Now, the purpose of this presentation, in lieu of all the technology that exists in the world, is to determine whether these two particular pieces of technology, AOL Instant Messenger and Twitter, are in fact creative and innovative. And the criteria that we're going to use to determine whether or not something is creative or innovative is as follows. The definition that we're going to use for creativity are things that have value by means of being either novel, unique, or unconventional. Whereas something is innovative if it duly applies that sense of creativity to make something useful or something that has a high level of utility. Now, while not absolutely prerequisite, we do see the importance of an item being marketable if it's truly going to be creative and innovative. It's not just enough to invent something, but it has to be something that you can make other people want to use. And before we get into AOL Instant Messenger and Twitter in some additional detail here, what you see before you is a conglomerate of technologies that people have used over many years to communicate with one another. And you see, as the timeline begins over here, that there's been quite a bit of distance between forms of communication. But as we center in on AOL Instant Messenger in 1997 and later Twitter in 2006, you'll notice that with the growth of technology, there's been an explosion of ways in which people communicate with one another. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our first part of the presentation. That would be Sherry's part in AOL Instant Messenger. Go ahead, Sherry.
AOL Instant Messenger, or AIM, was launched in 1997, and it was pretty impressive at the time. We have to remember that we can't compare it to things that we see today. We have to think of it in the time period that it was, and we want to look back to when it was created in 1997. The screenshots that we have are extremely limited due to the inability to take those, or that people didn't take advantage of some of the tools that they had as much at that time. Today we have information at our fingertips. Then that wasn't as common of a thing to do. Logging into the AOL Instant Messenger was pretty basic at the beginning. Whenever you would log in, this buddy list is what you would see. You'd be able to see who was on or who was offline, and you could sort them, as you can see here, depending on who the person was. As far as other resources or additions that you could do, it was a very basic. The setup, which is another option, is another screenshot that we have. The sounds that you can use, privacy, those types of things. But again, extremely basic. The sounds that you might remember if you've used it: doors opening and closing, a certain ding for you to get a message or to send a message, all very basic. There was no sending documents, no sending photos, and just very limited in what it was able to do. Now, one of the other things that was a shortcoming that they did try to fix, not very successfully, was that anyone could add you to your buddy list. So if I wanted to be on your buddy list, see when you were on, see when you were not, I could do that, and there was really no way of stopping me. But having this information, as you can see, is pretty basic compared to what we have today. Runco stated, "Creative things are always original by being either novel, unique, unusual, or unconventional." And when we look at AIM, AOL Instant Messenger, it changed how people communicated. It was an unusual form of communication. They didn't need to send a fax, send an email. This was able to be a real-time conversation, and this isn't something that people had really seen before, and it was available all over the world. If you look at the instant message screen capture I got there between Roger and Sarah, this is actually not version 1.0 that we're talking about. This is the oldest one that I could find. It obviously has video, so we know it's not from version 1.0, but it does give you an idea that even several versions later, how very basic it was. If we want to ask the question, is or was AIM innovative, we need to go back to the beginning and look at what we defined innovative as. And we define that as one application of creativity, mainly centered on an item's usefulness or utility. And I think we need to take a moment and look beyond just general uses for AIM. General population, carrying on conversations, meeting other people, but was it used beyond those? And the answer is yes. Studies were done through AIM, and they found that research was better because they weren't limited by geography. They could get a pool of people randomly or more methodically depending on what their desire was, and they found that using AIM specifically was a really great way to do some research. And stemming from that, universities began using AIM to reach out to their students. They would have things available on their websites where people could post questions, asking librarians questions. Libraries would also hold little mini sessions on how to do things, or give examples or advice or support to people that may not be actually coming into the library. And people said that they liked this better because they didn't have to just focus on the normal frequently asked questions. They could ask their own question, get more information, get additional help, and how useful that was to them. Students that may not be able to always make it into the library were able to get help. And as we know, you have to stay current in order to stay relevant. And while we're not using AIM at the U of I, this is a screenshot of our actual asking a librarian a question at the U of I, and how that was started in AIM, and that's something that still continues today at many colleges.
Thanks, Sherry. We'd also be remiss if we didn't mention a little bit about the marketability that AIM commandeered in the market at the time. As the screen shows, AIM was an original. So many other chat clients tried to mimic it, all with varying degrees of success. ICQ, Yahoo Messenger, Windows Messenger, GChat, Skype, Facebook Messenger, all of them were like AIM, but none of them could capture AIM's magic. AIM was ubiquitous. There was a stretch of time in the 90s and early 2000s when AOL was a social requisite. Even though this was short-lived, the AOL name remained powerful, and the screen names we accumulated from it stuck with us. Everyone had an AIM handle. You didn't have to worry about who used what. Saying "what's your screen name" was tantamount to asking for someone's number. Everyone owned it, everyone used it, it was simple, and it worked. Growing up with AIM, it became more than just a program we used. It turned a culture all on its own, long before we realized we'd been living it.
And now let's head to Eric, who will talk to us about Twitter.
We're going to first define what Twitter is, and then talk about how it pertains to innovation and creativity as we move forward.
Thanks to Twitter, it's possible to share short, bite-sized updates about your life and follow the updates of people that matter to you via the web. Here's how it works. Meet Carla. She's addicted to her mobile phone, reads blogs every day, and has contacts all over the world. The Twitter pages look a little like blogs, with very short posts. Each page is personal and has updates from friends. The updates were always short, under 140 characters. Plus, she could post updates and follow her friends using the Twitter website, software on her browser, a mobile phone, or instant messages. By asking members to answer the question, "What are you doing?" Carla found that Twitter brought her closer to people that matter to her, 140 characters at a time.
The word Twitter has two common definitions. One, that of a bird who gives a call consisting of repeated, light, tremulous sounds. And two, to make a post on the social networking site Twitter. Twitter is a form of communication referred to as a microblog. This medium of blogging is different from the most common form of blogging because it contains very small elements of content such as short sentences, individual images, or video links. Twitter has completely transformed the way that people communicate. It's increased the speed at which news is gathered and distributed, and created online communities on a global scale of like-minded people. It's played a crucial role in overthrowing governments, created thought leaders, and reduced the distance between people. It's had profound social implications. At its root, I don't consider Twitter to be all that innovative. It essentially does what the previous forms of communication that we've covered did already, dating back almost 20 years ago. However, advances in technology have allowed the company to provide more functionality to a global audience. What I do find innovative is the way that people are using Twitter today. Retailers tapped into its power to market their products, get instant customer feedback, and hashtags are now commonplace in TV commercials. Politicians are using Twitter, and it's been a staging ground for political scandals both large and small, and has rapidly increased the speed and scope of campaigns and campaign coverage. Schoolchildren who grew up reading about the wonders of outer space can tweet questions to an astronaut during a live video stream. And cities are using Twitter for emergency preparedness and response to report to stay up to date on crises. These examples are just a pinprick of the overall influence that Twitter has had on creativity and innovation. With an estimated 8.7 billion devices connected to the internet, Twitter will undoubtedly play a central role in the transfer of the creative ideas that will shape the future of innovation and invention.
Thanks, Eric. Now let's go ahead and look at AOL Instant Messenger and Twitter and compare them against one another. In isolation, I think it's pretty obvious thus far to see that both AIM and Twitter were both creative and innovative. However, when compared against one another, it's going to be interesting to find out whether or not one might have been more creative or more innovative than the other. So let's go ahead and review some of the criteria we used in this presentation. First, we said that something is creative if it has value by means of being either novel, unique, or unconventional. And additionally, something is innovative if it has a successful application of that creativity to make an item useful or have a high degree of utility. But we also said it wasn't enough for something to be creative and innovative, but it also had to have some measure of marketability. Clearly from the presentations of Sherry and Eric, it should be obvious that AIM and Twitter were pretty similar. And it would be much too simplistic to say that AIM was more creative or innovative because it came first, or conversely, that Twitter was more creative and innovative because it had so much more time to improve upon the usefulness that AIM began. So we have to come to the premise that everything that can be invented has been invented. So looking at innovation and creativity from a chronological point of view might not help our causes. Now, it's also interesting to note that AIM at its peak had 53 million users. And conversely, Twitter now has over 500 million users. So one could maybe make the case that since Twitter reaches more people, it has more users, that it might be more useful because it's actually doing more for more people. But that also might be too simplistic of a view. Now, some other differences in which AIM and Twitter differ is that AIM wasn't limited in the amount of characters like Twitter. And you had friends, not followers. This is something that we'll hit upon in just a minute again, because the sense of community is, I think, a big factor in the creative and innovative aspects of these two technologies. But where I think really separates AIM from Twitter is that AIM was basically just for computers. Computers talk to other computers with people at those computers. As you see on the right, Twitter now is everywhere. You don't just have to be on your computer. You can be on your mobile device. You can be on a tablet. You can be anywhere tweeting what you feel about the world in 140 characters or less. And I think one of the biggest points that might give Twitter the slighter edge in creativity and innovation is that Twitter, as Eric mentioned, did so much that it affected politics, toppled governments, and really swayed important elections. So the creativity and innovation for Twitter, if it's going to have an edge over AIM, is the ways in which people use it. And I think if we look at it from that aspect, we can probably say that as a conclusion, Twitter might have a slight edge over AIM as a more creative and innovative product for the sheer fact that it opened up so many more possibilities in how it's used